filmed, so we're going to get ready and get started. Um, so most of you understand, what we're going to go over here, but let's go over some of the details. Again, very similar to early childhood. Met with a wonderful group at Tillman, had several interactive sessions with them, and developed our needs list, much like the early childhood center that we went over. Different priorities here at Tillman. Every school had slightly different priorities. Elementaries are different from the high school, different from the, the different facility buildings that we have. So they're each tallied and prioritized. And we, at the last workshop, we made them prioritize them, with it. Not always easy to do. Because an element in life safety and security is number one, does not mean that number three is not important. How we put that to the group was, if we had to make a choice, what would be the first thing you think is most important to the student environment? So when you put it in that light, it made it a little bit easier to rank these, knowing that it's not if I don't put it number one, it'll never happen. That wasn't the case. But we did have to prioritize those because they do begin to domino together in some cases. So a very good process to get to that list. And as I mentioned, that list is going to be changing. Some items are going to be coming off. Other items will be going on. There's a whole nother list of needs from a maintenance standpoint that facilities tracks and keeps track of on a yearly basis. And some of those are accomplished. And again, that's a revolving door as well, but it ties together with ours. So we are proactive in our planning rather than reactive. So again, on the site, here, we identified two major zones where we could have potential expansion. And again, that's tied to trying to not start another domino of displacement that is not giving us any benefit. But it's also proximity of when we expand new space, it's got to be able to be justified and used appropriately and efficiently within the floor plan. Structurally, we have to build it so that we can build it without spending a lot of money on just the constructability part of it and not getting any program out of it. All those things start to weigh into where we identify these zones and, quite frankly, what the program need is. In this particular case, as we move over to the concept plans, their top priorities, two larger spaces are needed, which obviously have an impact on where we can put them on the site. A separation of their gymnasium and their cafeteria, which is now being shared space, which has probably the list that you sent had 8 or 9 items of security, operations, just general program efficiency that are issues with sharing these spaces. They're not alone in sharing that gym and cafeteria space, but it creates daily disruption to the environment for the kids and the staff. So one of the big elements they were looking for is build a new wellness gymnasium space, and therefore we could expand our cafeteria and eliminate a lot of those operational security issues. We've sized, some of these boxes for the appropriate size, and therefore looking at how it might fit onto the site. We are going that far in the planning. In this particular case, it allowed us to also create some circulation paths that aren't currently there that will help some of the flow on a daily basis back and forth between the larger spaces. Repurpose some of the cafeteria as well into some much needed storage. And there's other elements benefiting that expansion as well. The other large component is to create a new library on par with the other elementary schools, and certainly create even possibly a better environment. We're in a new era. There's new things that have happened since those libraries were done. We need to take advantage of that and build the best possible learning environment that we can, but it has a certain square footage to it. So we've provided the new library over here, some ADA accessible restrooms. It works great off of our main corridors, and at the same time, benefit of locating at this area, we can create a corridor loop by expanding the building back, connecting into the existing building here on this side, and creating that secure interior hallway that does not exist currently. So you're getting multiple benefits by selecting the proximity of where this addition can go. And that's what we're looking for, multiple benefits, not just one, something that we can achieve multiple benefits for in the same expansion footprint. This particular plan shows a couple of additional classrooms hooked right into pods of classrooms here, additional accessible stairway to our second level. So again, we're taking care of multiple needs and priorities off our list with one expansion. One of the comments we had the other evening was about the classrooms and how do you assign those classrooms. We did explain that in all our meetings to date, what is a first grade classroom this year might be a third grade classroom next year, vice versa, based on enrollment, based on a lot of the utilization. When we build these new classrooms, we certainly want to build them into pods so that you can use them in groups and create better synergy across the grade levels. That's something that we want to build a building that be flexible for you in the future. And we're not creating isolated rooms, again, that only have one or two to them. It creates other issues for you guys, as you well know. And then how we would rename these, that would certainly be a template that we would look at, once we got the footprint sized and actually what we were able to build. So by those two being built, obviously we talked about the advantage of not sharing any longer. The existing library sits here. We now have a new library, so now we can create a new fine art area and proper code compliant kiln room in the repurposed library space. So there's that example of taking the same space, improving two things by building one expansion. And that runs throughout Tillman's plan. The other areas here are repurposing by adding new classrooms. We can repurpose some other areas. We can add some small learning intervention spaces, office spaces. We can provide separation or expansion of their resource center for their teachers, centrally located, by offloading some of the small learning areas into other areas that are better sized, better proportioned, and can service more of the students. As we move upstairs, again, this is the second floor of the expansion. It basically takes this shape. The library would stick out past that, could have a higher ceiling in there, a lot of natural light at this location, direct connection to what would now be a courtyard here. We would see this as being, some glass to let some natural light in, but we could really create a wonderful space here. This would be the second floor up above, accessible by stairs. Additional restrooms as well, and 3 additional classrooms here on the end. The plan determined was we could then group some of our special needs rooms together that currently aren't, and create a better environment for our principal and assistant principal, our administration spaces. And then some of these other ancillary, and what you can't see over here is we ran out of wall on the 3rd floor, is as simple as turning space back into storage that we don't have. Most across the district, most of the storage areas are now offices and intervention areas and small learning environments. Well, they were storage for a reason. We still need to provide that program use, in our facility. So it allows us to, in some cases, put the building back to what its original use was, which was designed very well and still is a need. So I think in this case, there's been several of the learning and curriculum highest priorities that have been managed with this type of plan. But again, if we built the gymnasium here, and that's where we stopped, we have a plan for where it should go and why it should go there. We understand what the benefits of that could be, and we would domino off that as far as we could. If we don't build the new library, we can't repurpose for an art room kiln. That's okay. Maybe that's the next funding mechanism that comes, and that's our next highest priority. We'll take a priority off. We'll move the next one up 3 to 5 years. We'll see what's happening. It's all based on that chain reaction of here's where the roadmap is, what some of the ideas are. There's some value associated with that, and you can't read these over there. These plans represent about 25,000 square foot of expansion space and about 18,000 square foot of renovation at a cost range of $7 to $9 million. Now, that's if you added all these colors up. Certainly is not the mandate that you either do all of this or nothing. Um, it's the benefit of showing them different options that they have. And then when we would come together and package this across the district, it may be a mandate. We want libraries equalized. That's our top priority. We want the district to be able to say, at all elementary schools, every child gets the same advantage in the learning environment of the library. That becomes the top priority based on the district's strategic plan. And then we would adjust our individual Tillman plan to meet that with it. So I know that's brief and quick, but you guys know most of this anyway. But that's how this whole tool is working. And when you put all these facilities together, in some cases, not so much in the elementary schools, but in some of the other high school and Hoff building, there's some interconnectivity even between the buildings and the programs that we have to adjust for. So it can get fairly complex, but again, you've got to have a detailed tool to be able to handle that complexity.